Is the Bank of Japan about to rug pull the entire risk market? I'm Taylor Schrum. Welcome to the Crypto Morning News. Today I'm going to be talking about the Bank of Japan rollout of this big rate hike. We're going to be talking about it. We're also going to be talking about some Bitcoin support that seems to be holding on pretty strong. And of course, we've got a whole slew of news here on the Crypto Morning Report. I'm T. Shroom, and I'm better than I deserve. Some call me Taylor. Let's get into this morning sentiment. It's a critical level for Bitcoin ahead of a Bank of Japan event. Bitcoin fear and greed rocking out at 16 out of 100. This is extreme fear. So Bitcoin is back into extreme fear. If you're feeling fearful, go ahead and smash the like button. I know that the emotions have gotten to me a couple of times here, but I don't act on my emotions. I stay focused and make only my investment decisions based off of logic, reason, and the charts. 25 basis point cuts in January has actually ticked up for the back on the American side for the Federal Reserve. January is now expecting 22% likelihood as of Polymarket. So if you go here, you look at the January 28th decision. It's still definitely not guaranteed at all. It's actually in the minority here. 22% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut in January. 76% chance of no change, just keeping it flat. Let's go back to the sentiment here and get into the major focus of the day. And then I will get into the Bank of Japan situation, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. But some other major stories here. Fed Waller said Fed is 50 to 100%, or I'm sorry, 50 to 100 basis points over neutral. So he could potentially see us getting down to what that would be, 2.75 from where we are now if we went down the full 100 basis points. That would be pretty significant, and that would mean quite a few more rate cuts in 2026. So Fed Waller trying to give the bulls a little hope here going into this big Bank of Japan event. Oracle, 10 billion Michigan data center in limbo after Blue Owl funding talks stall. So could be potentially more slowing down over on the AI narrative side, and it seems to be particularly hitting Oracle hard, as well as CoreWeave. CoreWeave also getting kind of caught in the crossfire there from the AI story, starting to maybe decelerate. President Trump is the wild card for today. President Trump will deliver a speech at the 2026 U.S. policies at 9 p.m. Eastern today. So there could be some pretty big announcements coming out of that. We shall see coming out from the White House. Bank of Japan expected to hike rates tomorrow at 25 basis points. This will mark the highest Bank of Japan rate since 1995. So those rates are not going to be the rate decision will be coming out, but then the press briefing and the statement, those will not be coming out until we're fast asleep tomorrow night. Because remember, Japan is on the other side of the world from New York. And so it's going to be a very inconvenient time for this information to come out. I will break down more of that in just a second. Trump designates Venezuelan government a group of bad people that gives them a little bit of a different classification, and orders a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers. Okay, so that could potentially have an effect on the price of oil, which has a big effect on inflation. As of now, this is probably a 1 out of 10 story, but this could very quickly become a 5 or 8 out of 10 story if oil is actually respondent to this. Oil prices respond to this event. All right, we have some bullish vibes, but those are our major stories. We got a wild card, but the major focus is the statements here from Fed Waller. Obviously, the Bank of Japan is a pretty big deal, but we've got a whole 24 hours before we get to that. So Solana is piloting quantum-resistant transactions through the Project 11 initiative, testing post-quantum security as part of early network upgrade effort. And we don't get away from quantum, but we go over to Bitcoin, where Michael Saylor says quantum computing won't break Bitcoin, it will harden it. I'll just go ahead and agree with that. I think that Bitcoin does have a big question to answer with the quantum question. However, I don't see a world where Bitcoin does not become quantum resistant. I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but there's going to be a lot of political headlines, a lot of political turmoil within Bitcoin voters to get to where the Bitcoin protocol is quantum proof. Solana kind of leading the way there. So bullish vibes. That's just more tailwinds there for Solana. More wind in the sails for the price to eventually price in just a very robust and durable project there in Solana. Looking ahead, December 18th, core inflation and inflation November. And then we also get the 30th, on the 30th of December, the FOMC minutes. Asia actually closed green. So that's actually kind of interesting that we had the Nike, the Japanese stock market close up 0.2%, Hong Kong closing up 0.9%, and China, Shanghai composite closing up 1.1%. So Asia actually feeling somewhat bullish. Looking at Bitcoin here, Bitcoin doing its thing to the upside, at least this morning, getting a nice bounce off of this resistance here that I had drawn out. This goes back quite a ways. Are there other lines of resistance? Absolutely, there are. But this one goes quite a ways back and just taps here the August 2nd and further back in 2023. So this is a line that I've been watching. I think it's an important line to hold on the weekly. Obviously, we've already wicked through it several times on the daily, but so far, I believe that the weekly has held this line. It's actually held this line quite handsomely, and so we want to continue to see that. I've also got a box here drawn, but that's just it would take more time to explain what that box is. Looking at the weekly histograms here, it's something that I've been keeping you all up to date with. I think that this is an important indicator right now. From as far as traditional indicators go, a lot of investors take a look here at the MACD indicator. And this right now, this is telling me that the momentum indicator called the MACD indicator, the red histograms you'll see, these guys right here, right? These are actually waning, right? They're moving in this direction. You could also say they're decelerating, right? So bears are actually losing their footing. They're losing that momentum. And if you look right here, ever so slightly, the angle of this line here, my writing tool is I'll use a line tool here actually. You can see here, if I draw a straight line, you can see that this part of the line here is starting to diverge from that line, signaling that momentum is shifting and that the MACD line is actually going back into a convergent cycle with the signal line. Okay, this is the signal line, this yellow line. This is the MACD line, that blue line. When this curves back up, which I just showed you, that is bullish, right? At least out on the weekly time frame. So that looks good to me. I like that. This is a very good place to accumulate Bitcoin, in my opinion. However, we do have some talented analysts in the Tim Warren Trading Group who have a pretty strong argument for why we may go lower. We could actually go lower from here. So be on your toes, making sure that you are watching both directions of possibility. I think right now, though, that the probability of today is that we continue higher. Clearly, there's somebody buying a lot of Bitcoin right now. We just saw the price move quite a bit after the market opened. So I don't have any intel on that, but somebody's buying a lot of Bitcoin right now. All right, let's get into a little bit of the comments here, and then I will give you my breakdown on the Japanese event, the big Bank of Japan event that's going to be happening here. All right, so some of the comments. Derek Boyer said, "Good morning, fellas. Quick question, Shrum. If you could only pick 4 ETFs to invest in, what would they be, and what percentage would you allocate into each?" 4 ETFs. Well, I mean, I would probably do IBIT, QQQ, and Granny Shots, and I would maybe throw the semiconductors in there, right? And just for the purposes of doing this very quickly, I would maybe do 25% into each. Maybe I would overweight Bitcoin a little bit here. Okay. So that's, I mean, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for there, Derek. The other thing is that there's a lot of other ways to skin that cat, but I wanted to give you an answer to that. So Yori said, "Good morning." Explosive said, "Why did Bitcoin just shoot up?" Yeah, I don't have an answer for you right now. Everything that I'm seeing is just saying kind of makes sense for us to continue to go sideways for Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. All right. Seeing some folks expressing some thoughts here on some actions within the White House. Aaron said, if you had to pick between 30 ETH or 230 Solana, which has a higher ROI over several years? I think the short answer would probably be Solana. I think Solana would probably have a better ROI over several years. Esco said Jasmy better pump. I would be very, I'd be careful with Jasmy. I don't know that Jasmy is going to get the traction that a lot of folks thought it would. Sleeping bag said that's a fire answer, and Kenny G said, "Good morning, fan. Do you think BMNR is a good buy?" Man, I think that if there is going to be a successful Ethereum treasury company, I think Bitminer is going to do well. BMNR, the ticker, Tom Lee is the big champion there. So that's kind of my thoughts on that one. All right, let's go check out the Bitcoin chart and keep in our heads the Bank of Japan situation. This is where I really want to kind of take a second to digest and kind of think through what's going on. And I want to give you guys my take on it. So, Bank of Japan, the last time that we saw a rate hike from the Bank of Japan was back here in January. I believe it was January 24th of 2025. Okay. And from that time, that was essentially the top. It was kind of essentially the top. I mean, there was some higher quotes here on the candlestick of December 16th of the previous year of 2024. But essentially what happened is from there, we went higher, and then we had a pretty big pullback when the Bank of Japan delivered the hike, right? And we saw a pushback all the way back down to 78, all the way down to 74.6. And that was let me move this line over so I can see. That was a 31% pullback, guys, right? So that was a pretty big pullback when the Bank of Japan did what they're about to do tomorrow in the recent history. So do I think that we are going to see that big of a pullback? I do not. And this is why. I think that this time around, we have Polymarket, and the market has known since essentially December 1st of 2025 that there was a very good chance that the Bank of Japan was going to be hiking rates. So since December 1st, let's go back and look at the Bitcoin chart since December 1st. So if we go back and look at December 1st, it would have been right around here. We've essentially been sideways, right? So the market has actually began to look at the Bank of Japan story and price in the Bitcoin should essentially be sideways, right? Last time, the Bank of Japan headline hit and we went down. I think this time we actually continue to go sideways and maybe even go up a little bit. And that is because this time we have had a lot of time to digest that the Bank of Japan is going to cut rates. In addition, this is the retail side, right? Retail has known via Polymarket since December 1st. There's also been a pretty good chance that the institutions already knew of what the bank was going to do. And so that is something that they've already gone ahead and started to price in. I think at this point in time, what matters with the Bank of Japan event is what they come out and say and what they release in a press statement. If they say they're going to hike more, if they say they're going to do more stimulus, and what that really means, right? But there's one thing that people are actually forgetting about here, which is that at the same time the Bank of Japan is hiking rates, the United States is actually cutting rates, right? We've cut 3 times in 2025. We should have there's a strong argument to say we probably should have seen more cutting, but we had a cut in September, then we had 2 more cuts in 2025. Okay, this is essentially kind of balancing out the yen carry trade, because as the yen rate comes up, the federal funds rate is actually coming down. The US side is actually coming down, right? So there's a bit of an evening out, right? If you take one step forward and one step, or two steps forward and one step back, we're actually taking one step forward and then one step back. So we come back to where we were. And if you actually consider the fact that we've had 3 cuts from the Fed, then maybe you're actually saying we've taken 3 steps forward and we're going to have 1 step back for that yen carry trade. So that's why I think that Bitcoin is essentially going to go sideways here, and into the end of the year, we probably won't see much fireworks. I think we'll just kind of stay sideways, and then by the new year, we'll be in a complete reset for the market, and it'll just be whatever allocators show kind of their cards on the first couple weeks of trading for 2026. So that's kind of my thoughts there. And that for the Bank of Japan situation, if the Bank of Japan comes out and says, "Hey, look, we're going to keep hiking rates," that's not necessarily the end. That's not necessarily the most bearish thing, because they said that last time, January 2025. They said the same thing, right? They said that they were going to keep hiking rates. Well, they didn't. Okay, they did not keep hiking rates. So if they say they're going to keep hiking rates, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to, because last time they said it and they didn't. They did one hike and they stopped because it was too much pressure where pressure shouldn't be. So it's pretty interesting. Warrior said, "What are your thoughts on Coinbase's announcement yesterday?" Well, you may have to enlighten me. One thing that I should let you guys know is I have been completely out of the loop for a couple of days because I've been on an amazing work trip with Tim and Smay and Crux and Rufio. And so getting back today, I may have missed this Coinbase news. Let me know what you think the Coinbase news is, and I'll give you some thoughts on it. Tiger said, "Will we have an altcoin season, or was last December it?" Good question. Government shutdown looms in January. Yes. That's good. That's good to remember. There's been a can that has been kicked down the road, and that can will have to be kicked down the road again in January. So that is something to remember, that there are going to be some bearish pressures in January from the U.S. government. So Warrior said, also regarding the address from the Oval Office tonight, my sources are saying the news will be before the address. Not sure on what all of that will entail, but it is supposed to be around the economy. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe it'll be around the couple $1,000s that people are going to be getting in their tax refunds. Maybe it's going to be about a couple of different things. And then Warrior said the Coinbase announcement is today at 2. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I don't have any kind of reason to speculate on what that might be. But do I think there's going to be an altcoin season? I do. I think it's going to be consolidated to a lot less cryptos than in the past. I think this time there's going to be, probably 15 or 30 cryptos that are going to see quite a bit of upside. But I think that there may be some issues with a lot of the longer tail, right, of crypto. I think a lot of the smaller cap, mid cap stock cryptos may have an issue this time around, and that's just my view, right? I think that there will be some small cap and mid caps that do very well, very very well, but I don't know that we're going to see just the long tail of crypto all do well in all ways, because I just think that that's the institutional cycle, and institutions are going to pump the main coins when they come in, and then there's going to be some retail fervor that comes in after that. But I would rather be in the first wave of movement to the upside. All right. Roy said altcoin season already happened. Well, I would not agree with that. There's a lot of indicators that we talk about in the Discord. There's a lot of indicators that did not trigger. So altcoin season did not happen. We saw most altcoins are actually higher than they were in the past. And total 2 is actually higher than in 2023. So if I go show you guys total 3 on the weekly chart, you can see that altcoins as an asset class are trading higher than they were in 2023. And if you go look at total two, the same is true. And even total, which includes Bitcoin, is trading much higher than 2023. So there has been a bull market, and I believe we are still in a bull market, but we have not had the euphoric pop off phase that we've had in the past. And so that's the main reason why I don't think we've seen altcoin season just yet. Aaron said a lot of things still coming, still buying dips and holding. German Pound Cake said, over the long run, does crypto truly stay decentralized, or does it become digital corporate money controlled by states and big institutions? Be careful with thinking about that kind of stuff too much, because ultimately we're here to make money, right? I like to think about those things, German Pound Cake, but here on YouTube, we don't want to get people too lost in the weeds. After all, we do kind of know that things tend to centralize over time, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, these things are built to be decentralized. So they'll be more decentralized than legacy systems. All right. Sweet. Good deal. All right. Well, I hope you guys had a great weekend. And now it's Wednesday, right? It still feels like, to me, like the weekend was very, very recent because I had an extended business meeting. But yep, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and happy trading, happy investing. Want to give a shout out to our sponsors, 2Bit. If you are looking to trade crypto, go check out 2Bit. They're in the Linktree link in the description. Also, big shout out to Breakout. If you're looking to trade with a bigger account, but you only want to spend about $1,000 to do that, then look no further than Breakout. You could trade with $100,000 size account with only $1,000. That's how prop trading works. Go check out our partners over at Breakout for that. And of course, if you're looking for crypto tax services, you can check out decrypted.tax and you get 25% off when you tell them that Tim Warren Trading sent you. Have a good rest of your day and happy trading. Adios.